Hello. I would like to give you a short lecture in regards to project managers, and I have a bold theory here, and I state in the beginning that project managers are useless, because my question I'm going to raise up here is, how come so many projects fail when you have so many highly skilled project managers? Let me introduce myself. I was born in 1961. I'm married, have 4 children. I've been working in various areas. From the job descriptions, from the domains I've been working in, I've been developing a thing called Organization, Technology and Service Management Framework, what's currently under rework. And I've been developing the SEQUIST, an organization project time cost and resource estimation method. So let me go through as to why I state that project managers are useless. If you look into Wikipedia, you will find that project management is the initialization, planning, controlling, and completion of projects. Now it becomes interesting because it states in Wikipedia many terms and procedures in project management are established and standardized. So great, we have a term that is standardized, so we get our communication going. And the other one is we have procedures. So we apparently have some sequencing of action that are standardized. And the interesting part inside that is typically overlooked in nearly every project management area is that the contemporary counterpart to project management is process management. I'm going to go into the details of that a bit later. We have a lot of project management frameworks, and I have an excerpt here called Agile Development Project Management, Critical Path Method, Critical Chain Project Management, the IPMA, the Kanban, the Lean, the PM Book, the Prince tools, Scrum, Scrumban, Six Sigma, and Waterfall. So it seems there are a lot of different methods that will enable you to successfully run a project. And I come up with the idea and say project managers are useless. My question starts with, would you choose an airplane if the respective picture you see here is standard? I guess you would not. And I come up with a very interesting fact that 83.9% of IT projects partially or completely fail. This is the result of the Standish Group Chaos report, and where it is stated that at least, or as to their feedback, nearly 84% of IT projects fail. And to be honest, if I take the view set into the normal industry, I would say this can be directly transferred to all other industries. And I come up here with the picture out of the Pulsa Profession 2017. Okay, I know it's 6 years old, but it's still true, because they have been asking the question of the projects started in the organization in the last 12 months that were deemed failures. What were the primary causes for those failures? It was allowed to get up to 3. And you see here the list, and I'm going to go into some of those details that apparently lead to the fact that only 16% of projects survive. So maybe you might understand why I say project managers are useless if they only get a success rate of 16%, because that's apparently way off course. I would not go into an airplane if I knew that only 16% land correctly and the rest will have another destination and some of them will totally crash. That would be not my area to go in. If you see here, you have various reasons stated, and I'm going to get into that right now. So the first statement I have to say here, I hope you will agree, is that if you do not achieve the desired result with what you think that's standard, you are doing something wrong, and I don't care. You're doing something wrong if you do not achieve the goals that you think you have been approaching to in the correct way. So the question I have here is, how come that those presumably highly trained people fail to achieve their job? I come up here with a very short RCA, a root cause analysis. So the potential causes may be that all those frameworks are incorrect. The theory is faulty. We have no practical relevance of those frameworks, but it's nice pictures. And if you look into some areas, you will find that there are heavy reports of failures of frameworks, but nobody cares. It's still hyped. This is one potential cause. The next one is the people only have a certificate. If you look especially into the ISOs, international standardizations and stuff like that, you see people have a certificate. That's something to make money as a provider, but that doesn't necessarily enable you or brings you the abilities you need to get the job done. So the other potential would be that all those project managers are idiots, and as you see already here, I heavily doubt that this is the case. Maybe, however, that basic physical laws are ignored would be a potential cause for project failure. We have limited visions of what there is to be done. There is missing experience because it doesn't help you if you have your certificate. You have your driver's license. That doesn't mean you can drive. You have a project manager's license. That doesn't mean you know how to manage a project. And there might be human factors. This is the area you always get if there is error because of that person. And my question would be, how come that you know the person is doing it wrong and you don't act on it? So apparently you are not controlling the situation. And there may be other causes. So this is a very short RCA, and I'm going to get into some details on maybe that will help you how to handle. The ideal scene for project management. Before we start to analyze errors, first thing is we need to see what would be ideal so that we can see the deviations from the ideal scene. Because if you want to change something and you don't know what direction to go to, that's great that you want to change something, but what's the thing to do? Let's analyze some of those reported errors. If you look, the list I've taken out of the PMA, in combination with the Standish Group statement that more than 80% of project fails, it seems that project managers are those sitting in the small boat above, and that they apparently don't know how to get the job done, and thus that would make them useless. So let me go through and see if there is a common denominator or if there is something else. So first action, stated in that report from the Project Management Institute, 41% of projects partly or fully fail due to change in organization priorities. The ideal scene would be that priorities once set by the organization are maintained. The reason for the deviation may be that the priority was not set honestly in the first step by management. Because if the organization, that means typically management is interfering, is going in there, they will say this is priority. And if you've been working in companies, you know that priorities can change sometimes even on a daily basis if it is for the organization, and sometimes in the second if it is within of the projects. The other thing, what's going to happen potentially is that there are too many priorities, because if you have everything on the same level as priority, you will not be able to handle it. And the other one, the change in organization priorities may be caused by the unawareness of the effects of priority change. This is something I've been experienced several times, that people say, yeah, 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 because they want to keep that chair. The handling for the project manager. How can I handle the situation if the organization priorities are changing? One thing would be make the management aware of the consequences. They think they know, but how come they still do that, and this are pushing your project into a failure? So make them aware, and if they still don't listen and your project is running against the border, what do you do? One thing would be get in contact with your customer. Get your customer to support you. And the customer itself should make better contracts that prevent people to be withdrawn from the projects. I've seen people being allocated at a 400% because priority, priority, priority. So if you don't do that, it might be resulting in your project failure, and the customer is to make a contract that is disabling some specials to make on the management level that always want to have more, 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 and thus, crushing down the projects. You will have to have a contract that prevents that. There are people named, there shall be situations on how to replace and all those things. I know that management right now will be not very happy with me stating that, but those who are honest managers will say, okay, let's do that, and I'll keep my people in. Because the effects of that organization priority change will be project failing is one thing. That's something the company has to handle on the customer level. However, your people will be very unhappy. If you have unhappy people, they won't create good results. So the customer should do it that way, and the stakeholders, they should enforce that project priorities should be part of the reporting, including a good management on priorities, on state of projects, and so forth. And people tend to say, yeah, this is a renowned supplier. A renowned supplier doesn't mean it's a good supplier. Sometimes it's better to take a newbie who is able and willing to do it right, but choosing the companies that are on the wrong path. And stakeholders need to be aware that a project failure is a major failure for the organization because it affects finances. That's something where stakeholders mostly have their view on. But it affects your customers. So next customers may go down. And it affects your staff because staff sometimes say, okay, I've been doing 3 projects right now, all went into failure due to the fact that resources were withdrawn or priorities were changed. I'm going to take something where I can have success and I can be proud of what I've been doing. That's the first step. Now, the next one stated inside of that Standish group of that PMI reference is 39% state that projects fail due to inaccurate requirements gathering. You see the picture I put there. Do not operate this machine without guards in place. So that means know what you are doing. The ideal scene of requirements handling is get them accurately. There is the respective requirements board, International Requirements Board, IREB, IREB, that will give you support how to write requirements correctly and how to handle that. And the potential failure reason is, first, and I've seen that too often, the people did not read the requirements in the first place. Everybody wants the contract, so why should I read the reference documents? Why should I read whatever? that will lead definitely to requirements not gathered correctly. And then the next one is, oh, we don't have time because it's so much, so let's skip some requirements. And I've seen skipping requirements resulting in major crashes of projects. And the other one is the ability to read and understand requirements and regulatory are not existing. If I say reading is not available or is not existing, I mean it exactly that way. Because if you go in and you ask, what's the real data that is in there, you will often find that people think they have read, but they are unable to really do that correctly. They read, but they don't understand the implications. Sometimes a simple sentence, as I've seen in a requirements document from an OEM, in the front there is on an accepted reference the statement that those references listed in the appendix are a full part of the contract. So nobody reading that, I guess I was the first one to do, and that caused some major troubles because there were 20 pages with at least 15 to 20 references named at the end. And if I take all those things, let's say 20 pages times 20 references, we already have 400 references. If you take 20 pages only, sometimes it's 50 pages per each reference, that is right now legally mandatory reference documents that is part of the contract. You can calculate yourself 400 times 20. It's already a major action, 400 times 50 and sometimes even more. Take it yourself. The project manager, he needs to have a review process of requirements by qualified staff executed. If you don't get the time to read your requirements, it's like, I don't know where I have to fly to, but I'm going to start. So project managers need to get that one done. If they don't do, they are useless. A project manager is to insist to ensure the understanding of the customers, of his customers' needs. And the customer who is affected, he needs to ensure requirements management is done effectively at his supplier. So that typically is done by having the derived requirements from his requirements as a feedback loop and reread them and ensure that demands are done and understood correctly. If people do that, they say, oh, that takes so much time. Every time you don't do it, you have 20 times more work as if you would have done it correctly in the first time. And the stakeholders of the company, they need to ensure we have a process for requirements management. It's implemented and running. If you don't have that, your projects will fail. So, change in project objectives. The ideal scene, as stated beforehand, requirements gathered. We need to have the changes in writing, and we need to see the impacts of any change. Because, yeah, we can do that. But sometimes a very, very small, apparently small change leads to major changes. And as well, major changes, as they are seen the first hand, are sometimes very, very easy to handle if you don't do that. Okay, your project is going to fail, your job. So the project manager, looking into the failure reasons, might state, oh, we don't have requirements in the first place. And sometimes you have that we do everything for the customer. Customers demanding a change, let's do that. Not seeing what it implements. Instead of stating, thank you for your request, we're going to evaluate that and get you feedback. I've seen things where, as stated beforehand, small changes had a large impact, and as well large changes had a very minor impact. So this making it right for the customer is definitely leading to a potential project failure. The project manager itself, he needs to have a change management process and he needs to ensure it's adhered to. So the thing on changes is that as well the project manager needs to have project abandon criteria and execute them accordingly. If the customer changes too large, you better abandon the project. That should be part of your contract. Sometimes people want to have a rocket in the chair to fly fast enough. So project manager needs to ensure the process is there. If he doesn't do that, and I have that special with agile, yeah, great. But how does that change affect my system? So what project does have project abandon criteria? If you don't have, okay, so you are doomed to fail, because if the customer is coming up and it is agreed that on major changes the project will be abandoned and it will be a restart, that's great for you. If you don't have, that's a problem. The customer who is affected, he needs to ensure that change management is done at himself and at his supplier effectively, and that change impact analysis in terms of change are really executed. I know it sounds so easy. Yes, we do that, and I always see it again. Oh, this is a minor change with a heavy impact. And the stakeholder, for sure, they need to ensure that it's there. If you go into and then say, okay, go, let me do an assessment of the change management process. And I tell you, I've seen very large and renowned companies that don't have change management. So before you can ensure you have a successful project, you need to know how do you handle if there's a change coming in. The inadequate vision or goal for the project is another one affecting heavily the success or failure rate. So in the ideal scene, as can be seen in the glasses put there, you need to have a clear vision of the goal that meets the expectations of your customer and your internal abilities. That would be the ideal scene. The potential failure would be no vision established at all. What's the goal? We don't have appropriate requirements in the first place. So what is the goal? Is it described? Is the vision clear? The other one is, we don't talk with the customer because we fear to lose the contract. It's better to not have the contract that is leading you to failure, but having a contract. So, and then you have that, we don't need all that details. Don't go into the details with me. I've seen that as well extremely often, especially on specific groups of people. They don't want to know the details and they do it as a brush off, and that brush off is leading to project failure. So up to you to handle. The project manager, it's one of his jobs to establish and communicate the vision and to uphold that vision. If he's not doing that, and I see that very often, that the project managers are just task force mode, because they have to handle all the problems from before, plus the vision not existing. Doesn't work. So the coordination with the customer to ensure the vision is correct. If you are a project manager, but you are not part of the contract negotiation, how can you know what the customer wants? And here as well, stop but implement a rocket in that chair. If you don't have a vision where you need to go to, you might say, I want to go to whatever, something in Asia. If you don't have the vision correctly and you think that's your nearest Chinese supplier around the corner, the project will fail. So don't start with a project before you have the good vision and on the goals for the project. The customer who is affected, he has to ensure that his goals are communicated, and he has to verify the understanding happens on the supplier side. Very seldomly done, or assume the people understand and not ask for the real feedback. And the stakeholders, especially on the management board, They have to reject the plans and understand the visions of the plans. Sometimes they say that's not possible because I can't trust. Yeah, maybe you can trust. But if you don't reject the plans, the visions might go into the wrong directions. And that will lead to a project failure. Now we come to inadequate and poor communication. The ideal scene is when communication is in a way that the recipient understands the source, fully duplicates. The potential failure reason is none of the before mentioned is executed correctly because a requirement, a change is a communication. So if you take it backwards, the missing communication is the major source because change is not done, goals are not done, and all those things. Then we have pressure in the systems. Pressure always means I don't have enough time to handle the job correctly. And that for sure removes clarity and makes poor communication. And for sure there is a special area where I've been doing a lecture, okay, that's in German, on communication. For the project manager, he needs to have written and consistent data. That shall be the key. You need to have them in writing. There is no verbal agreement because if you're not there and your agreements are not put down, nobody will know. Get an agreement, and that's in writing. And if you have just done that at a nice coffee talk with your customer or whoever, put that down. Ensure it's written. Else the communication will get lost. And lost communication, okay, the rest I think you can imagine. And you have to remove opinion. The moment your customer or your staff tell you they think, I think it's that way, I have the opinion of, then you're already in trouble. Because if you want to steer something and you think that you are in the Pacific, however you are in the Atlantic, that's, let's say, suboptimal. And the customer himself as well has to ensure clear communication in writing. And he has to look and don't listen to what's happening. You always get those nice reports and you have those management meetings, and sometimes in trouble you have daily, weekly or monthly special board coming up. You have to go around and look. You have to look into companies, so your supplier quality management. You send out one, but sometimes it's helpful if you send out the second. To look, and if coming in trouble, go and look, don't listen. For the stakeholder, same as before. You need to have reliable data that ensure you that communication is done. How are the requirements? Are they written? Are they agreed? Are they baselined? I don't want to have the presentation stating me what we have there. I want to see the requirements as well. And sometimes if you go in, you will see that those requirements that are deemed to be good are in fact very, very bad. And I've seen it on a large supplier in automotive area that short before the start of production, there was a safety relevant feature. It had about 3,000 requirements on the top level, and safety relevant means you have to label those requirements with respective safety levels that are intended with it. Out of that, there were 3. So to be honest, it was a disaster. And the disaster even made it to the press without going into details who it was. So now we come to inaccurate time, cost, and resource estimations. The ideal scene would that plan and reality differ only slightly because you cannot plan everything for the future. If you look into Stuttgart 21, German disaster on the railway area, or the Bear, the German disaster on the airport, there is a big difference. And okay, that's definitely not as it should be. The failure reasons, the process for the execution of a time, cost, and resource estimate is unknown or undefined. The methods for the estimations are false. And one thing is, I don't want to have the data in the first place. And this is, I guess, the reason on the German failures on Stuttgart 21 and Bär, because it was a political decision. It had nothing to do with technical ones. And then those people are, rather intended to make a nice face for the next election, but to come up with reality data and confront them. So the project manager, here we come back to what we had beforehand in Wikipedia stated, have the process to a realistic and executable detail. If you don't have the processes, how can you define time? If you don't know that sometimes it's a 3 times workaround and do it again and do it again, and that has to be done according to standards, how can you plan? Time, cost, resources will get off, and then everything is delayed. Up to you. And for sure, you need to have an honest and experienced project manager who as well has the stand to talk up and speak up if there is something getting out or somebody wants to override and say, no, we don't have those resources, especially as sales wants to have cheap prices and or come up oftenly. You need to have a realistic estimation, and better to have a bad but realistic or bad finance-wise bad plan but realistic one than to have a nice one but unrealistic one. The second one will put you into those troubles as stated before and make your project partially or fully failing. And the customer who is affected, he needs to check the plan. Oh wow, that's a great plan. We are very fast. Those supplier tells me he is the fastest in the world. And just recently at that, they have the best ones. Yeah, great, but only on paper. And for sure, you need to request a detailed plan, or at least have the insight into the detailed plan and check. And then you will see if your supplier knows what he's talking about or he just is not doing it. And for the stakeholders, they need to see a project plan was working well or not. And a lot of projects don't work as expected. So it's a fool me once, fool me twice. First time, shame on you. Second time, shame on me. They need to ensure that those plans are done correctly. And if the next one who has been already failing in the project before right now goes up and does it without sufficient changes, it's the stakeholder who has the problem. And for sure, this is a short sidestep. I've developed specially based on that an own tool where you make your processes, where you can see all the interdependencies. It plans fast and accurate to the degree you plan your process. If you don't plan and if you for sure put the wrong data in, it's a problem. And you can adapt changes at ease. It's just a 3 minutes action to adapt the changes. If you go into Sequist, you will find that. But that's a short one. And now we come to a special one. You see a nice picture of kind of chaos. Undefined opportunities and risks. They are undefined. So my question would be, do you have a standard risk list? Let's go inside and show you what kind of risks you have. And I tell you out of experience, most of them are unknown, even though they are public available like you have here. Here is an IT code implementation incorrect, person hours not there, project schedule, and I'm just going to open up all those things. If you think this is enough, you will see this is a lot of things coming on, standard risk list, and they fit together with the problems as stated before that are the reasons for project failures. And you see a lot of errors or risks that will lead to error or project failures are coming up, inclusive change management, as you see here, quality management. Your vendors here, the software vendors, the experience level of your stuff, and poor functional match of the package. You say, wow, that's already a lot. No, it's just the beginning of the standard risk list, and I'm not going to take you into all details here. But you will see that there is a lot of other areas where there are risks coming into the system. and misuse of tools, data not there, release procedures not, data not there, development process insufficient. Oh, and to be honest, I've seldom seen good processes. And you see as well, we are number 2. There are a lot more, but this is a standard for the project manager to do. And if you don't have a risk management process implemented in your project management process, it will lead you to failure. Up to you.